Chapter 24. Daryl sat there, munching on my fries and not saying a word. But then again, he didn't have to. I could see it in his eyes as he watched me. A small smile would grace his lips from time to time, and that didn't help the storm inside me. Once I was finished eating, I sat back and looked at him. I might be considering spending time with you and having you help me learn this other side of myself, I said. That would be wise, since you did spend time with Ryan to learn about the vampire side. It would only be fitting to learn the wolf side of you as well, he said, sitting back and stretching out his legs. Give me a week and I'll give you my decision. I sort of asked and told him. He raised his eyebrows at me, and I bit my tongue slightly so I didn't say anything sarcastic. I had a feeling he knew what I was doing. Okay, I'll give you 1 week from today. We will meet here and go over things, he said as he stood up. But before he left, he bent over. Trust me when I say you'll want to spend time with me. Your wolf side is going to need it, he whispered, but added a bit of a low growl to it. My insides were on fire after he did that. Daryl laughed slightly as he walked out of the diner. Damn him and his ways. He did that on purpose. Looking out the window, I saw the snow hadn't stopped or lightened up any. Hunting in this was a bad idea, so I decided to head home where I would be nice and warm and safe. I might be a hybrid, but I also had a feeling the organization had a few hunters watching me, and I wasn't ready to deal with that aspect just yet. Walking into my place, I shut and locked the door, turning on the light in the kitchen, and about screamed as he was sitting there at the kitchen table. I hear you have been looking for me, Danny, he said. I forgot how smooth and deep his voice was. Yes, I have been, I said, turning my back to him. Wasn't the smartest of moves? I made a pot of coffee, and while it was brewing, I turned around. Why? He asked, standing over me. My face was in the middle of his chest. I couldn't look up to see his face. I need to ask some questions, was all I could say. It was the truth, but I had a hard time talking to a very muscular chest. Then it hit me. His scent was pine and sandalwood. I never knew he'd smelt like this before. But then again, I wasn't a hybrid either. Danny. Mm-hmm, I replied. I realized that I was sniffing him. When in the hell did I start doing this? He bent down and inhaled my scent. He backed up a few feet as he looked at me. I saw he blinked a few times, trying to figure something out. This can't be possible, he said as he started to pace. This is why I need to talk to you, David, I said, hearing the coffee beep. I poured us both a cup of coffee. I put his coffee on the table, and I went to sit on the couch, waiting for him to stop pacing. He always did that when he needed to think. David has grown older since I last saw him, which was 10 years ago. We were childhood friends, dated in high school, until one day he disappeared. 6 months went by, and nothing, until one night when he snuck into my room. We spent the whole night talking about what happened to him. A female vampire and a werewolf had bitten him. He was the only hybrid, and he had remained hidden until now. We always loved each other. We even talked about marriage. But after what happened to him, he didn't want me to live a life on the run. He walked out of my life 10 years ago. Now, I sat there watching him pace back and forth in my tiny apartment. My heart still beats for him, and now that we were both hybrids, there was a lot we could be hopeful for. Danny, when and why did this happen to you? You have been at the top of the list of hunters to fear, he said, as he grabbed his coffee and sat down next to me. I told him the story with Ryan, Daryl, and Tom and the organization and their plans for me. He sat there listening to the whole thing, but my mind kept going back to the fact that his leg was touching mine. You know you have to stay away from the organization as well as Ryan and Daryl. Both are not good for you since they both work for the organization, he said. My mouth dropped at that one. You didn't know? He asked, surprised. I knew Daryl did, but I didn't know Ryan did as well, I said, sitting there in shock. Ryan has been slipping through their fingers for a better part of almost 80 years. Until you walked into the picture. Ryan knew your bloodline, so he made a deal with them. He could get close to you, turn you when you were ready, and work with you to secure a deal with the organization," he said. "That son of a bitch," I growled out. Chapter 25. "Danny, can I stay with you for a few days? I want to work with you. And also I have missed you," he said as his finger traced the side of my face. "Of course you can, David. I've missed the hell out of you," I said, smiling up at him. "Okay, good, because I have a bag in your room," he said and winked as he got up to get more coffee. I laughed and sat back relaxing for the first time in a long time. I don't know what it was going on, if anything, but having him here, even for a few days, was better than none. We stayed up for the next few hours talking about our childhood and high school. I will admit, Danny, that I have never stopped loving you. I have kept tabs on you all these years, watching you from a distance. I was hoping one day our paths would cross and we would be together, but I never expected this," he said, looking at me. "I've never stopped loving you either, David. You were it for me," I said, looking into his black eyes. Those eyes were so beautiful to me. After he had changed, his eyes went solid black. Mine hasn't changed, but my body couldn't change either, so it was probably a trait, I'm guessing. We sat there for what seemed like eternity, staring into each other's eyes. We just admitted that we still loved each other and wanted to be together. Two hybrids that fate brought back together. What were the odds? "Let's get some sleep. There's a place I want to take you tomorrow so I can see how much you know," he said as he stood up and held out his hand. I placed my tiny hand in his large one, and as soon as our skin touched, it was as if a million little fireworks went off. It took both our breaths away. He smiled down at me, and I followed him into the bedroom. Looking over at David, I felt at peace. It wasn't like it was with Ryan. My heart and soul knew David, and I knew with him I wouldn't get hurt. Replaying our conversation in my mind from last night finally made me feel confident. Being with him, I hoped he had some answers. If not, I'm sure we would find out together. I got up quietly and went to make some coffee. While that was brewing, I took a quick shower and put on my usual clothes. Walking into the kitchen, David was leaning against the counter, sipping on his, while watching me with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said as he handed me my cup. "Morning." I took my cup and walked over to the window. One nice thing about this apartment, my back windows overlooked a small field, and beyond that was about 30 acres of woods. Only part of this town that was left untouched. Of course, the person that owned the property made sure it couldn't ever be sold. "Where are we headed?" I asked, turning to look at him. As Darvin walked over to where I was at, he stood there looking out the window, not saying anything for a moment. "It's about an hour from here. I have a place that is hidden deep in the woods. We will be safe there, also where you can do your training," he said, turning to look at me. "And training?" I asked. "You will need it. You are the only female hybrid, and your organization will do whatever it can to make sure they have you." I had a feeling about that, was all I could say. I knew what David was saying was true. This organization, also known as the Willard Academy, was known for its ruthlessness. To the outside world, it was a closed academy that only granted selected people inside. But inside was a whole different story. They were taught how to kill and to show no emotion. Hours upon hours of intense training. Chapter 26. Getting out of David's truck, I couldn't believe my eyes. His home was beautiful on the outside. There were 4 greenhouses, a few gardens surrounding the house that I'm sure during the summertime were full of flowers or herbs, knowing Darvin. There were brick walkways that led in different directions. The house was a log cabin, but I could tell it was larger on the inside than what appeared on the outside. "Come on, I want to show you your new home," he said with a wink and took a hold of my hand. I followed him inside and stopped once we walked in. Once inside, the floors were all light oak. The semicircular staircase was in a beautiful cherry wood. As I followed Dave in, the family room had a beautiful stone fireplace, a few couches, and a large wooden coffee table. The kitchen and the family room were connected, except there was a small step that separated them. The kitchen had a large bay window surrounding the kitchen table. There was an island in the center and enough room to have 10 people at one time in it. As we walked back through the family room, the other side of the entryway was a small living room that doubled as his library and office. Upstairs there was a smaller bedroom and a bathroom that was attached to it. On the other side of the hall was his bedroom. Walking into his bedroom, I couldn't believe how beautiful and large it was. There was a large California king canopy that I've always wanted, 2 large dressers. There was also French doors that had black lace curtains covering the windows on the door, and it opened up onto a small balcony. Sitting out there, you were looking at the woods as well as the greenhouse that was off to one side. I could picture myself sitting there in the morning sun, drinking my coffee, enjoying the sounds of nature. The bathroom was connected to the bedroom, and there held a large garden tub. It could easily fit 4 people, a shower that was made out of stone and had a waterfall built into it. Double sinks, and the counter also had a vanity built into it as well. The closets were large walk-ins. I was definitely going to get used to staying here for a while until we worked everything out. I knew what he said about this being my new home, but I didn't want to count on that yet until we talked about it and made sure this was what we wanted. "David, your house is amazing," I said, walking over and following him back downstairs. "Thank you. It took me about 8 years to finish it all," he said as we went to the kitchen. "You did this all yourself?" "I had help from some friends, but mainly I did." "What other hidden talents do you have?" I asked with a light chuckle. "You will find out soon enough," he said as he turned around and looked down at me. I could see he had a small smirk on his lips. Remembering him and that smirk always meant he was up to no good. "David," I said as I started back up, hitting the counter, I knew I was trapped. But it was a good kind of trapped. He slowly walked towards me. His hand went under my chin and gently lifted my face as his one finger traced the side of my jaw. "You have grown into such a beautiful, amazing woman," he said quietly as he bent down and our lips touched. Instantly, my insides were engulfed in a fire that I have never felt before. He picked me up and carried me upstairs. For the next few hours, we ravished each other.